Sisters. I'm Nat.
And I'm Kat. And welcome to the Crime Chat. I am your forensic femme fatale, Natalie, is your true crime addict connoisseur.
We're just two normal girls obsessed with dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown.
And here is your disclaimer, chatters. The following crime chat does contain adult content and probably violent scenarios today based on your title. I don't know what your story is about, but I'm going to go with yes.
Yes.
So your listener discretion is advised.
You have been warned. And before we get into today's crime chat, Kat, what have you done?
Whenever we were talking about in the Ripper episode, Cassius Clay, so you sent me a link about the story, and it was from the fat electrician?
Yes.
Yeah. He was really good. Like, I really liked his synopsis and everything like that. And I was like, I had no idea. No idea.
Cassius Clay.
Yeah.
Don't you love Cassius Clay, though, now?
Yes. Yeah.
Badass.
Yeah.
I love the scene where he said, Cassius Clay walked up to the desk and said, if you believe in the laws of man, here's the Constitution. If you believe in the laws of God, here's the Bible. If you don't believe in either, here are my guns.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
It was really cool, really cool. And I started watching, I watched the Gentleman series on Netflix with heartthrob Theo James.
Ooh, I didn't even notice that was there.
Yeah, so you know who Theo James is?
No.
He played 4 on the Divergent series. He's been in a couple of different things. I saw it pop up and I was like, oh, this looks really interesting. And I was talking to Chris and I was like, hey, I started watching The Gentleman. And he's like, I wanted to see that.
What is it about?
It's actually based off of the Gentleman movie that stars Matthew McConaughey. So there was a movie and then they made a series about it.
Okay.
He is a royalty. He's a duke.
Okay.
His father passes away. He's deployed somewhere in the Royal Army and is told to come home because he needs to do Duke things. Comes to find out his father had dealings with an underground marijuana farm, and that's how they were getting some of their money. So the whole time throughout the series, he's trying to distance himself and like come out from whatever obligations his father made.
Yeah.
And it's funny. There's a lot of action in it. People are dying left and right. And then at the end, there's a little twist at the end, though. So
okay.
I won't ruin it for you. Great series.
Okay.
Highly entertained. What about you?
I put down here, I need a good movie to watch, so I'll check that out. The Gentleman on Netflix. Okay.
The Gentleman.
In addition to your homework from last week, which was Cassius Clay.
Yes.
You need to watch another one called Proportional from the same YouTuber, which is the fat electrician, who is a great storyteller. He's a retired Marine. A lot of passion for American history and telling kind of the hero stories and stuff like that. So I really like him. So that's your homework for next week, Proportional.
Okay.
You're going to love it. I finished watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes, you got all the way through?
Nine-Nine!
Nine-Nine!
Super sad it's over.
Yeah. Well, it just popped in my mind when you were talking about YouTube.
Yeah.
So you sent me the link for the Watcher Network. We've talked about Shane Madej and Ryan Bergera and Stephen Lim. So they were on BuzzFeed Unsolved, started their own company, and pushed a lot of stuff out on YouTube. And apparently they're leaving YouTube. So did you see the follow-up video?
The update.
Yeah, where they're like, we're so sorry, insensitivity. Even when I saw the original one and people were bitching and complaining into that, I'm like, they don't owe anybody an apology.
No.
It's their company.
Yeah.
If that's what they want to do with it,
Yeah.
they know that they're taking a risk with losing listeners or supporters in doing that. But if they think it's what's best for their company, you don't owe anybody any explanation about that.
You don't. Sometimes you have to, if you're a fan, you got to follow them to the next step. And if the next step is, paying $1 to their Patreon, maybe you should do it.
As little as $1.
Right.
With them breaking up with YouTube, I was like, either I'm going to pay for their Patreon, which I think is probably, I don't know, $5 a month or something, or just do their streaming service, which is only $5.99 a month.
Yeah.
I mean, and people were complaining because they said they put it low enough from where people would be able to afford it, and I guess it was bitching and complaining about, like, that's Nothing. Less than a coffee at Starbucks.
It is. The actual content that they're creating is directed towards their viewers. You're actually paying a talent to speak to you.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they do is either within their realm of whether the Watcher universe. Think about it. If you were like you are a Marvel person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if Marvel came out with its own Patreon and said, "This is only for Marvel people. I want to speak to my people."
Yeah.
You would pay way more than $5. Okay, so.
Well, I mean, it's a little different now because Marvel got bought out by Disney, and now I have to worry about a Disney Plus subscription. And
Yeah.
rock on.
Yes.
You watch on.
You watch on.
So for your story today, you asked me to do an introduction on death row.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a lot.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
I did try to kind of narrow it down, and we did talk about this a little bit. Back in season 1, we did an episode called Posthumous Pardons.
Yes.
People who were convicted and executed who were then posthumously pardoned for their crime. So we did talk a little bit about this, but gonna recap and add a little bit more into it.
Okay.
So the death penalty has existed in the United States since colonial times. Its history is intertwined with slavery, segregation, and social reform movements. Death row is a place in prison that holds criminals who are waiting to be executed, and these inmates must have been convicted of a capital crime and sentenced to death in their judicial proceedings. It's also known as condemned row, but the term death row is used also to figuratively describe the state of awaiting execution, meaning I'm on death row. So it's not just a place, it's like a state of being. Mm-hmm. I'm not on death row, by the way. I'm sentenced by other means at the moment. In the United States, after an individual is found guilty of a capital offense in the state where execution is legal, the judge will give the jury the option of imposing the death sentence or life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. It is then up to the jury to decide whether to give the death sentence. Usually this also has to be a unanimous decision. If the jury agrees on death, the defendant will remain on death row during his appeal, habeas corpus procedures, which may actually take several decades. And I think that's where some people who are opposed to it is.
Yeah.
I'll talk about the opposition here in a second, but the cost. Is it cheaper to keep somebody in prison who's awaiting execution for 20, 30 years?
Yeah.
But it's a long-standing argument that we're not going to get into.
No.
But the United States is one of 54 countries worldwide where the death penalty is applied regularly. Existence of the death penalty can be traced back to the colonial Virginia era, with the first documented execution of Captain George Kendall in 1608, and the first female documented execution of Jan Champion in 1632. There were no executions, as we talked about in the posthumous pardons episode, between 1967 and 1977. So, in 1972, the Supreme Court of the United States struck down the capital punishment statutes in Furman versus Georgia, reducing all pending death sentences to life imprisonment at the time. Subsequently, a majority of the states enacted new death penalty statutes, and the court affirmed the legality of the practice in 1976 in the case Gregg versus Georgia. Since then, more than 8,700 defendants have been sentenced to death.
Wow.
Of these, more than 1,550 have actually been executed.
Oh, wow.
At least 190 people who were sentenced to death since 1972 have been exonerated. So that's a 2.2 or 1 in 46 ratio. 2.2% or a 1 in 46 ratio who have actually been exonerated. As of 2023, there are around 2,400 prisoners currently on death row in the United States. The national death row population has actually declined over the last 20 years from either sentence reversals, the actual executions themselves, or death by other causes, natural means, shanked in prison, whatever. These are actually outpacing the new death penalty sentences.
Oh.
Most inmates die of natural causes before they actually are executed because the appeal and habeas corpus process is so long. So since 1977, the states that have executed the most death row inmates are Texas, 464, Virginia, 108, and Oklahoma, 94. As of 2010, there are 4 states who house more than half of all the inmates in the country who are waiting pending sentencing or execution on death row.
Wow.
California, Florida, Texas, and Pennsylvania. Currently, California has the highest number of inmates on death row at 665. Florida follows with 313, and then Texas with 192. Pennsylvania, the 4 top, was actually currently listed as 7th with 123 inmates on death row.
Wow. I think Florida should enact death by alligator. So, like, I think what they should do...
Throw them in an alligator pit.
Okay, you can have a lethal injection, or you can wrestle your way to freedom. Like, if you come out alive, we could talk about life imprisonment.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Pick your poison. Opponents of the capital punishment claim that a prisoner's isolation and uncertainty of their fate constitute a form of psychological abuse, and that especially long-time death row inmates are prone to develop a mental disorder if they do not already suffer from such a condition.
Yeah.
This is referred to as the death row phenomenon. Heard of that before? But estimates reveal that 5 to 10% of all inmates on death row will suffer from mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense,
Yeah.
I guess. You know, especially if you're in isolation or if you're in the hole,
Yeah.
you know, and you get 1 hour of outside time a day for years and years and years. But there are currently 23 states plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico who have abolished the death penalty. Michigan was the first in 1847, but that actually wasn't officially abolished until 1962 when they made their state's constitution. There was some kind of legal form that it wasn't official until it was written out.
Okay.
The last state to abolish the death penalty was Virginia in 2021, so that was pretty recent. As of 2024, 5 executions nationwide have been carried out this year alone. So we're at the end of April. There's been 5 executions nationwide, 1 in each of the following states: Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Alabama, Georgia. And there are currently 7 executions scheduled for the remainder of the year, 1 in Alabama, Oklahoma, Missouri, 2 in Texas, and 2 in Ohio.
Ooh.
Side note, for 2025, there's 10 scheduled executions, all in the state of Ohio.
What the hell, Ohio?
I don't know. Like, they got a lot going on up in Ohio. But I hope that helps you for your story, a little bit of death row data.
Yes, thank you for that. So, in the history of the criminal justice system, there are a few stories that captivate and provoke contemplation, quite like that of Carla Faye Tucker. What lies between redemption, justice, and a pickaxe?
Carla Faye Tucker?
That's what we're going to talk about, yeah. Well, Carla Faye Tucker does know what lies between those 3. Her narrative still causes debate surrounding crime and punishment to today. So, Carla Faye Tucker was born on November 18th, 1959 in Houston, Texas. Carla was the youngest of 3 sisters. Her father, Larry, was a longshoreman who had a serious drug problem. And her mother, Carolyn, who had a serious drinking problem. So, this was not a fun house to be raised in.
Yeah. Set up for disaster there.
Yeah. Teachers, friends, and family always admitted that there was something special about Carla. When they look back on her personality, they remember that she was always able to talk her way out of anything and that she didn't take no for an answer at any time. Unfortunately, her parents' marriage was troubled. They would break up, like they would get back on and off during the years, which did not do any favors to these poor children. And eventually they got divorced when Carla was 10 years old. Her father got custody at first of her and her sisters.
Interesting.
Well, that just tells you how bad the mom was.
I was going to say it must have been really that bad, but if he had a drug problem and she had a drinking problem,
Yeah.
you know, what's the worst of 2 evils? I don't know.
Yeah. Now, Carla was 10 years old at this point, and Carla had already kind of been acting out in her behavior. And also, Carla felt really bad about herself because she didn't look like her sisters. So, like, her sisters had blonde hair and blue eyes, and Carla was brunette with brown eyes.
Oh, okay.
She just looked complete opposite. So she always felt like she didn't belong. And after they got divorced, she found out that she was not her father's child.
Okay,
Yeah, had an affair.
I was going to say, is it the mailman's?
We're going to get into that. And now you can see why the father probably divorced her. I mean, not saying that the father was a good guy. He was not a good guy. Their relationship influenced Carla's perspective on family. Carolyn, the mother, became a rock groupie. She traveled with bands like the Allman Brothers, the Marshall Tucker Band, and the Eagles.
Oh, wow.
Carla stated by the age of 8, she started smoking. By the age of 11, Carla had already begun experimenting with drugs, shooting heroin, and drinking. So that's a heavy drug to be experimenting with.
Yeah, 11?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So she also started becoming sexually active. At this time, her father was struggling to care for them. I don't think he had a full-time job, so I think he had a real difficult time putting food on the table. So he ended up handing the girls back over to the mother. I only know the name of one sister. Honestly, the other sister, I don't think she wants to be affiliated with this at all, so you just can't find...
Can you blame her?
No. Carla stated that her and her sisters hung out with people much older than them, and they mostly belonged to a biker gang called the Banditos. So
the Banditos.
Yeah, so mom was like this biker groupie chick, and they all kind of traveled to their favorite bands and stuff like that. Carla stated that the bikers supplied the drugs for her and her sisters, and also that she recalls being raped when she was 14 years old by one of them. She would also drop out of 9th grade at the age of 14 years old, and she would just like leave home for weeks and months at a time. I don't think anybody was really looking for her. In October 1975, when she was 16 years old, her and her friend committed burglary, and they were arrested and placed on probation. This incident basically sparked the beginning of the criminal activities.
Gateway crime.
Yeah, seriously. She also started to follow in her mother's footsteps. She entered a life of prostitution. She even joined her mom on the road trips with the bands. Carla remembered going on a trip to visit the band The Eagles. At age 16, she married a man named Stephen Griffin, which only lasted a couple of months. They didn't get along. She was 16. It was probably drug-induced marriage. On June 13, 1981, Carla wrecked her motorcycle and suffered serious injuries. She had a steel plate put in her head, and then she walked after that with like a pronounced limp. Tragically, her mother passed away when Carla was 20 years old. When she was 21, Carla was arrested for drug possession and theft. She would be arrested multiple times after this for drug-related offenses, theft, leading to short periods of incarceration in county jails and detention centers. During one of her incarcerations, she kept in touch. Well, she had friends on the outside. You know how that is.
Sure. You got connections.
You got connections. And, she was also affiliated with the Banditos.
Yeah.
One of her friends was this girl named Sean, and her husband, Jerry Lindeen, while she was incarcerated, introduced her to Daniel Garrett. He was a 35-year-old man, and he was 14 years her senior.
So she was 21.
Ew.
Yeah.
And he was also a fellow inmate in another jail, serving time for a burglary charge.
I mean, they had stuff in common.
Yeah.
That's a connection they can keep.
Yeah, I guess so. So they hooked up, well, not really physically, but they kind of like hooked up while they were serving their time.
They're pen pals.
I know. After serving their prospective jail sentences, they were released. And on June 11th, 1983, they held a birthday party for Carla's sister, Carrie. Carrie is the only sister I have the name for, okay? Because she was this close to the crime. The party was fueled by a potent mix of methadone, Valium, heroin, marijuana, and alcohol, and it lasted 3 days. Yeah, that's a lot of partying. That's a lot.
It's a lot of partying, but it's also a lot of uppers and downers, and
yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So Carla's friend Sean, the one who set them up, was there. When Sean came in, Sean stated that she broke up with her husband Dean. We're going to call Jerry Lindeen Dean, okay, at this point.
Okay.
She showed up at the party with a broken nose, bruises on her face, and Carla, coming from her background, it's very common for Carla to be possessive and a little exaggerated with like the way she's going to protect people. This infuriated her that her friend showed up, with bruises and it should infuriate anybody, but Carla may have taken it a bit far.
Oh, she's taking her earrings off. She's ready to go.
Yep, she was ready to kick his butt.
Yeah.
By Sunday, the party was coming to a close. On Sunday, Danny had to go to work, so he left. Carla kept using drugs with her friend Jimmy, and she was just brewing about like her hatred for Dean. Like she was just like, this son of a bitch, I can't believe if he treated her this way, and they were just
Yeah.
taking drugs and just fueling this psychotic anger trip that they were having. When Danny returned from work, Danny overheard the conversation between Carla and Jimmy, and Danny stated, hey, we should go over to Dean's house and steal his bike. Carla then told Danny and Jimmy that, hey, I stole Sean's keys to the apartment because Sean lived with Dean. I have the keys, so we don't even have to break in.
We can just go in.
She was planning to go to the house regardless to kick his butt. So now that she has 2 accomplices, she's like, hey, I got the keys. Let's just go. 3 of them arrived at Dean's place shortly after. The plan was Jimmy would stay in the getaway car and Carla and Danny would go inside and steal whatever they could and steal the bike. I guess one person would ride the bike home, and then whatever they could steal from inside the apartment, they would put in the car and they would get the hell out of there. However, when they stepped inside, they did not expect Dean to be awake. They heard a voice coming from the dark rooms. Who's there? Carla then turned from the front door, looked down the hallway to the bedroom, and she saw Dean sitting on the edge of the mattress, kind of looking into the hallway, but everything was dark. At this point, Danny grabbed a hammer, which was located in a toolbox by the front door, which they just walked in from. Okay, so he grabbed the hammer and then he began to hit Dean in the head. She ended up like jumping on top of Dean, looking at his bloody face where Danny hit him.
Look at me.
The way Danny described it was, she was admiring my work. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Danny also said Carla seemed really happy at that moment. But while Carla was on top of him, Carla then heard a little gasp of breath, like a little bubbly breath, because Dean was still alive and he was trying to breathe. So Carla jumped off of him. She ran down the hallway back to the toolbox, and this time she found a pickaxe. Now, do you know what a pickaxe is?
Yeah, it's like the pointed end, like if you think of an axe, but it's very like, it's kind of curvy and pointed.
Yes. So it's like something you hit stone with, like this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could have 2 sharp points on either end, or it can have a flat and a pointed end. Definitely a weapon you don't want to be hit with. Okay.
Oh.
She ended up running back into the room and she started hitting him. But when you're hitting somebody with a pickaxe, you're not just hitting them, you're impaling them. Now, while this was all happening, Danny noticed that she was gleeful. And Carla later stated that while she was hitting him, she was having like a sexual gratification and that she orgasmed multiple times while hitting him. Yeah, this is sick. Unfortunately, after she hit him a couple of times, Dean was still not dead. And she just went total blackout berserk, and she hit him about 20 times. And eventually, he was dead. The brutality of this was crazy. Danny left the bedroom and started loading Dean's bike parts. So, still going forward with the plan. Dead body, whatever.
Yeah.
Carla stayed in the bedroom and realized that, oh, wait a minute, they're not alone. She heard a sound coming from under the bed, and it was a girl hiding. Yeah, so somebody, I guess Dean brought home, was hiding naked under the bed.
Oh my gosh.
Her name was Deborah Thornton. When Deborah realized that Carla knew that she was in the room, Deborah scooted out and tried to pass Carla, but Carla took that pickaxe, man.
Was it the same bedroom that they just killed Dean in?
Yep.
Okay. So she was under the bed listening and hearing
The whole thing.
everything.
Yep.
The screams, the murders, the orgasms. She heard it all.
So that was a busy room, to say the least, that night.
Yeah.
Carla ended up driving the pickaxe into Deborah multiple times. Jimmy came into the house and was like, what the hell is going on? He said that when he entered the bedroom, he noticed that Carla had this weird grin on her face, that she was super happy to be killing Deborah as well. And at that point, Jimmy's like, oh no, I'm out of here. He ran out of the door. Maybe a couple of minutes later, he ended up coming back because he wanted the bike. Yeah. Yeah, the morality here is very, very low.
Did he get the bike though?
They got the bike.
Wait?
Yeah.
Okay.
They got a bunch of stuff. They got a bunch of bike parts from inside the apartment, and they also got Dean's bike. Yeah. They took all the stolen items from the apartment and they stored it at Danny's brother's house. His name is Doug. During the investigation, Doug stated that Carla told him about the 2 that she killed, and that she seemed very happy to tell him the story and almost gleeful that, listen to what I did tonight. And Dean and Deborah were discovered later later that day. So when this all took place, this was like 4:30, 5 a.m. That morning, a coworker stopped by Dean's, I guess maybe to pick him up or to see what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's when he discovered the bodies. He called the police, and when the police got there, the police stated that they were shocked at the level of just brutality and violence of the crime. To them, it was a burglary gone wrong. Carla and Danny watched the breaking news report on TV, just so happy the fact that they got away. They believe they got away with murder, and that it was just like,
look, they're talking about us.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But what they didn't realize is that night after they left, they were not quiet about their crime. They were bragging to Doug. Yeah, they were bragging to Doug. They were bragging to family and friends about what they did. Everybody was watching that news coverage, and people started calling into the police. So the police were on to them. Danny's brother, Doug, was dating Carrie, Carla's sister, who they had the party for.
Okay, so Danny's brother, Doug, is the place that they went and hid the stolen items.
Uh-huh.
The guy they killed, Danny, is Carrie's...
No.
Sean is the one that was separated from
Dean.
Okay.
Right. So Sean and Dean were a couple. Doug and Carrie are a couple. Danny and Carla are a couple. Everybody hated Dean. So when they brought Doug in, they said, okay, although we're taking your statement, it's all circumstantial. We need evidence. Right. We need a confession. Yeah. They wired Doug up. He should have no problem confessing to his brother about what he did.
Yes.
Danny, once again, spilled the beans and told him what happened that night. And, at the same time, implicating Carla and also implicating Jimmy.
Yeah.
Danny and Jimmy were arrested immediately. I don't know why Carla wasn't arrested immediately, but she was arrested a little after that.
Because she's a woman, and women don't do that.
Yeah, and this is, I guess, the early 80s. I don't know. Jimmy became state's witness and testified against Carla and Danny because technically he wasn't involved in the murder. He was just driving the getaway car. He was just an accessory, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. Carla and Danny were tried separately and entered a plea of not guilty in an attempt to avoid the death penalty. Carla talked about her troubled past and that, you know what, I don't remember that night. I've been... my entire life I'm a victim and yada, yada, yada. But the jury did not buy it. And she was sentenced to death on April 25th, 1984.
That's the anniversary. So that would have been, April 25th, 1984. When this episode comes out, it's April 27th. 2024. What? 40-year anniversary.
That's crazy. We got to add that to the trailer. And we'll add that to the sneak peek. 40-year anniversary. Yeah. Okay. Danny was also sentenced to death. Shortly after this, Carla found a Bible in jail and began not just reading it, but she began studying it. And Carla later stated that she was praying on her knees every single chance she can to ask God for forgiveness. I get this. I understand this self-preservation that narcissistic people feel or psychopathic people feel when you know the jig is up.
Yeah.
It becomes about you again. These people normally see Jesus in their toast. Just saying, I get it. But this is what was happening with her. Carla was, we all know that she's a little delulu, but I think that she was going down a very slippery slope because she just didn't want to face the realization that you're on the Green Mile now.
Yeah.
And, so Carla tried multiple times to appeal her conviction, stating that she was a born-again Christian and that now she follows Christ. She also blamed the drugs.
It's like a blanket ticket.
I know.
Oh, you're a Reformed Christian. Okay.
That wouldn't work today, but 1983, it kind of did almost work. People...
Well, that's just a few years after some of the states went back to executions. Yeah.
It was before social media. I think people were more gullible in the intentions of other people. I think people truly believed when someone said something, okay, you meant it. She blamed the drugs. She blamed the group of people that she was hanging out with. She was asking the state of Texas for forgiveness and, not to kill her. Yeah. We had politicians in the mix saying, oh, this person could be forgiven, or no, this person can't be forgiven. We had religious leaders saying, power of Christ compelled her, or whatever, something. I don't know. They would just taking anything. And not to mention the activists who were totally against the death penalty. She was basically asking anybody for help, but the judge and the state of Texas were like, no. Like, we reject all pleads for mercy.
Oh, okay. Well,
Texas is a FAFO. Fuck around, find out. So,
yep.
The question everybody asked at the time was she a threat to society? Was she a threat to herself? Also, was she reformed? A lot of people were asking, like, what's the sense of having a jail system if you can't rehabilitate somebody? What's the point? What's the point of sending all these people to jail? You're telling us somebody who literally found the Lord cannot be rehabilitated? Like, there was a lot of conflict here.
Huh. Yeah.
On top of all of this, Carla and Danny decided to get married while they both were on death row in 1995.
Aw. Like more fuel to the fire kind of
sympathy.
thing. Like, yeah.
She's a wife now. Like, God forbid she was a mother. Oh, my God.
I mean, my God, she never had any kids, though, right?
No.
Well, I mean, if she did, my children need their mother.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, Danny would die later the same year. He passed away from complications related to asthma. And now she's a widow. I mean, come on.
More ammunition.
Yeah. So she spent 14 years on death row. George W. Bush was the president that refused the 11th hour appeal to block her execution on February 3rd, 1998. Carla Faye Tucker walked out of her jail cell and literally skipped down the hallway to the chamber because in her head, she was going to meet her creator. She was happy that she was going to be with Christ now. She was executed by lethal injection. Now, little fun fact for you, because I know we've done this before. Carla's last meal.
Yes.
She requested a banana, a peach, a garden salad with extra ranch dressing. And that was it.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. Carla's life remains haunting, to say the least, and it's also a reminder of the consequences of our choices. Also, the power of transformation. I don't know, like, depending on where you're coming from and what belief system you have, if you feel that she truly was transformed in jail, if you feel that she truly can repent after killing somebody so violently. The whole fact that she was so happy and gleeful about killing somebody, not to mention she was sexually gratified, really is something that I think is a little deeper than...
Would she ever be able to go back into society and be a productive member and contribute to her community? No. I mean, reformation is one thing, right? And I do think it is possible for people to be reformed. Yeah. Does it actually happen? No, because I honestly don't feel that with a majority of them, I mean, it can happen, is basically just they go back to their self-surviving. Yeah. And it's anything I can do to get out of this current situation that I'm in. I'll tell you whatever you need to know. Right. And then, they get released. Yeah. A week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, right back in.
I think the only argument here is probably the death penalty. But that's great that she's reformed. That's great that she found the Lord and she found something that she can just devote her energy to. That's wonderful. Maybe the death penalty can be removed from the table, but you will never see the outside world again. You need to serve your sentence. You need to be punished for what you did. And you being a good Christian doesn't mean you're not a bad person. Right. And as a good Christian, you would be accepting of the sentence that you need to serve.
I was actually just about to say that. Yeah. So you can, when you repent, you also accept the circumstances and consequences that come to the choices that you made prior to your born again or prior to, whatever change. That's part of the circumstances that's kind of like surrounding. Yeah. That you would accept that and say, I deserve this. I'm going to do what I can and be a productive inmate and, give back, and be a good person in here. Right. But I'm where I'm supposed to be. Right. There's that level of acceptance.
Yeah. And that's a good Christian. Yeah. This person is not. There's the cross. There's her pickaxe.
No, she's in hell, so it's fine.
So that's my story about Carla Faye Tucker. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yes, that's the first I've ever heard of that story. So,
oh, good. Yeah. Okay.
Hanafe Tucker, and a name I will not forget.
No. Well, because we're going to leave you hanging, chatters. For more information on this case, please check out After That Crime Chat, only available on Patreon.
And don't forget to follow us, Crime Chat with Nat and Cat, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and X. See what we got going on. And remember, we do skip the first Saturday of the month to bring you more stories of dark crimes, evil minds, and occasionally the unknown.
Yes, remember Crime Chat with Nat and Cat. When you become a VIP chatter to our Patreon, you'll have access to bonus episodes, behind the scenes, bloopers, and free merch. And check out some merch in the works.
And be sure to come back to our next episode, which is scheduled for May 11th. It is a crime and cosmetic segment featuring Catherine the Great.
I can't wait to learn more about that queen. I cannot wait. You don't want to miss it.
You don't want to miss it. We'll see you next time, chatters.